interested you in wildlife?
My parents tell me when I was like a toddler, about 3, I used to go around the garden picking bees off flowers until one stung me. Even when I learned to talk, I started learning names of flowers and things like this. So I don't remember any of this, but obviously something in me was interested in all sorts of wildlife from a really early age.
Do you like your job?
Well, I did like my job, but I'm retired now. It was a very varied job. I was teaching children like you, I was putting on exhibitions, I was looking after collections, I was doing research. There's lots of varied things in my job, which is what I like.
How long have you been interested in pond dipping?
I was interested in pond dipping when I was at school. And I used to go out with a school friend on our bikes with our nets and our jam jars. And we used to collect all sorts of things from ponds, including newts, sticklebacks, lots of creatures.
What's your estimate of how many creatures are in the pond if you were together?
You've got vertebrates, which are the animals with backbones. So you've got newts. Newts are more closely related to us than anything else in that pond. There are 3 types of newts.
Salamander.
And this is the most common one. This is the smooth newt. The other newts, the 2 other newts, are the great crested newt, which is much bigger than this and has sort of warty skin. And the palmate newt, which has virtually no spots at all.
Put it in here.
Oh, that's a newt tadpole.
We've got
It's actually got its legs. See its tiny little legs?
Yeah.
And you've got crustaceans, freshwater shrimp, and the water fleas, and then you've got worms, and you've got other insects like flies, bloodworm, it's a sort of fly. These little things here, jumping around, they're water fleas.
Right.
That's what they look like magnified.
Whoa.
They're actually crustaceans, so they're actually related to crabs and shrimp.
Don't take one. Is it a bloodworm? Yeah, there's
The bloodworm is...
bloodworm
See this bloodworm here? That's the bloodworm. If you come around here a bit more.
Bloodworms are big. There's another thing there.
There's your bloodworm. They're bloodworms, they're not worms at all. They're insect larvae. That means they're the young stage of a fly called a midge.
How long do you think a bloodworm can get into its adult stage?
Probably a few weeks. It will turn into a chrysalis, which doesn't move so much and floats to the surface of the water. And then eventually that chrysalis, from that, will emerge a little midge, a little fly. And that's the adult stage. These you can actually buy in aquarium shops because because fish feed on them. Fish love these, and they need all the oxygen they can get. So they have hemoglobin in their blood, so that they can actually carry oxygen.
Can I get some of this? Can I get some of them?
Yeah, that's cool. Bloodworm, mine's massive. You should put it.
That's good, Roger. Thanks. You want us to have a look at the water fish? Well, water skaters are very interesting because they don't live in the water, they live on the water. And on the surface of any pond or any piece of water, there's something called surface tension, which is actually acts as a barrier to a lot of the creatures that live in the pond. They need a lot of energy to break through this surface tension. We don't. When we dive into a swimming pool, we don't even feel it. But if you're very small, you would find it difficult to break through the surface. And what these insects do, they've got at the ends of their feet, they've got water repellent hairs, which stops them from going beneath the surface tension. So they can walk along the surface tension just like we can walk along the ground, and they won't sink in, which is amazing. And how they find their food is they're very sensitive to tiny vibrations in the water, in the surface tension. So if an insect accidentally falls into the water and gets trapped in the surface tension because it can't break its way out, these will home in on it. They'll zoom in on these poor insects that fall into the water, and that's what they feed on.
Not like flies.
And they don't have
spiders.
jaws like a lot of insects. They have like a sucking tube.
Oh,
So they
mosquitoes.
Yeah, yes, like just like a mosquito, which they stick into the insect and suck out their juices.
You like water skating?
Yeah. Because they just like jump and then they land in water.
The snail. This is probably something called a wandering snail, which is quite common little snails. I don't think it's fully grown yet. It's only a young one.
Can I have it?
Oh, you can have it.
Thank you.
Have the water skater.
Hello, you can be ready, friend.
Well, this is another sort of water snail, and this is very curly. This is the ram's horn snail, or one of the ram's horn snails. So you've got two species of snail so far. And we only saw the larger stuff. If you was to actually look under the microscope, you'll see lots and lots of other things, which are much, much smaller, too small for us to see. So you've probably got thousands of different species of animals and plants.
What is your favourite animal from the film?
Oh, that's a difficult one, because I like them all really. They're all fascinating in their own way. I think the water skaters are quite fascinating.
Well, the best one I liked was the newts, because they're so big.
Yeah, that's right. But a lot of, just because something is bigger, it doesn't mean to say that it's any less fascinating or interesting than something that's smaller. I could have found water boatmen. Now they are fascinating because they live under the water, but they can also shoot through the surface film and fly. So I've actually seen them flying around, so into the water, swim under the water, go up, out, fly again.
If they were like a Pokemon as such, they'd be a water and a flying type.
Yeah, exactly. There are things that you may find in ponds which are really interesting. You know dragonflies, don't you? If you find a dragonfly larva, the larvae actually live in the pond, they live at the bottom of ponds. They can be about this big. Dragonflies have an extendable jaw. They've got their eyes here, huge eyes, and underneath their mouth they've got this thing that they can shoot out with pincers at the end, which is what they do. They carefully sneak up on something, and then this thing shoots out and grabs something like a fish or a tadpole. So if you actually see that happening, it's quite fascinating.
How could we improve our pond clipping?
Some of you were going a little bit too deep and picking up too much mud. If you have too much mud in the trays, then you can't see anything else in there. So you need a little bit more practice using the net. But you did quite well. You caught a lot of stuff. Now the important thing is to keep the net bag behind. It mustn't go like that, okay? So, you see I've got the net bag behind every time I turn it round?
It looks like a big fish. Yeah, that's what I think. It looks like a massive tadpole.
Right.
Well, that pond is a bit small, so I thought they could adjust it to a bigger size so the more fish could come in there and it would be more fascinating.
I think you're absolutely right. The bigger the pond, the more creatures, more different sorts of creatures you will have living in it. The best pond would have shallow areas and deeper areas. It would also have a vegetation growing along the edge, like you've got in a natural pond. You know, you've got, I'm not saying reeds, but that sort of thing around the edge. They're called marginal plants. You could have more plants that grow in the water. Because a lot of things eat plants, like snails and plants and so forth. So there's a lot of ways you could improve the pond, but I mean, from what we've seen today, it's not bad, you know. There's not many ponds that have quite so many water fleas as that.
What's your hobby?
What's my hobbies? Oh. Really, when I was working, I was actually doing my hobby and being paid for it. I was was very privileged in that respect, because I've been interested in wildlife and natural history since I was a kid. So that is my hobby, really.
It is kind of quite wet here because it is at the bottom of a bottom of a valley. I don't know if you, it's quite gentle, but if you go that way, the road's kind of going uphill slightly, aren't they? And if you go that way up towards the hospital, the road's kind of sloping upwards. It's going uphill, and we're actually at the bottom. So water is going to kind of collect in this area.
And actually, I think last year, someone came in and he said, "Oh, I have the plot where you were pond dipping today was his allotment." And he said, "Oh, it was always very, very wet and damp, and it was the lowest part of the site. So probably it's a really good place to have a pond. And it's made a very good pond, as you found out with Roger."